Hello and welcome to 3 Minute Gaming. I'm Nathan, and today I'm going to tell you if this game's worth their time and bandwidth.
Today's game is Princess Maker 2 Regeneration, a remastered and refined version of the classic life raising sim. Does this regeneration add enough improvements? Let's find out. Princess Maker 2 Regeneration is a definitive edition of Princess Maker 2 Refined, released in 2016, which in turn was a re-release of an old Japanese PC game from back in 1993. For those unfamiliar with the series, it's kind of like Tamagotchi, only it's a human girl, or rather a divine girl from the sky. As the hero who slew the Demon King, heaven sends you a celestial being in the form of a 10-year-old girl whom you are asked to raise. Which, yeah, seems like a pretty good deal. Skip the birth and diapers part and get right to the angst. The main loop is surprisingly simple. Each month you set your daughter's schedule, made of 3 10-day chunks. What she does during this time shapes her into who she'll become. If you have the cash, you can pay for expensive training to make her more refined, or perhaps a powerful mage or mighty warrior. You can send her out to work, which earns money but often lowers stats while gaining others. You can send her to various zones to quest or encounter magical beings with stories of their own. Or you can just lounge around and give her a break. The core mechanic is resource management. Not only are you limited in cash early on, but doing more difficult activities will raise your daughter's stress. Should she become too stressful, she'll get sick, rebel, run away, and so on, so you need to take her feelings in consideration. Doing nearly anything raises one of roughly 1 billion stats, which thankfully in this version are visible at all times. Which stats your daughter gains affects everything from combat, who in the royal court will talk to her, and most importantly, the ending. The game has over 70 endings depending on how you raise your daughter, from her becoming a best-selling novelist, or a dominatrix, or even the queen, so don't mess this up. You have 8 years to raise her before the game ends, with each year increasing the number of options available for her as the world opens up. There's also things like clothing, weapons and armor you can buy, gifts to give her, and more. What's important is that while there is a lot of min-maxing here, there's also a lot of going with the flow. As like with a real child, you can't control everything she does at all times. There's definitely some hands-off elements to this simulation, and you should really just be here for the stories that come with it. Regeneration is essentially the older refined version, but modernized for current consoles as well as PC, with a handful of new endings and completely overhauled art, as well as new CG art for vacations, ending, and events. I do have to mention the PS4 version, which is releasing later, does censor some aspects of the game, specifically the endings where your daughter chooses to marry you or your butler. So take that as you will. And that's Princess Maker 2 Regeneration, a modern version of a classic and arguably foundational life management game spruced up for a wider audience. So what do I like about Princess Maker 2 Regeneration? Well, that new UI is great. The ability to see all their stats at all times makes the game much more digestible and clearer on where she stands, making it a lot easier to laser focus on raising specific attributes. Additionally, this game is very addicting in a way a Tamagotchi is, or any other kind of min-max simulator. Attempting to raise this girl to go down one path or another, and seeing her have success in life will actually get you pretty attached and is surprisingly endearing. And lastly, there's a ton of factors that affect ending, story, and more. You can go the whole game and not engage in the monster and quest side and just focus on human politics, or train her to kill Satan and rule as the Queen of Darkness. No two games ever end the same. When it comes to the bad, most of the issues with this release stem from the original game. A big one being I wish they'd done more to improve and tutorialize it. The game has tons of stats, but mousing over them provides zero info, and even things like training or working aren't clear on which stats they raise or drop until you do them. There's no parenting book for how to raise this princess. You have zero guidance. On that note, there's a ton of RNG here, or at least factors beyond your control that affect your run. This game is more about guidance rather than control, which will frustrate some players. And lastly, the cycle does get repetitive, especially near the end. Early on, the game is stressful and difficult as you hardly have enough money to do anything, so send that 10-year-old to work. But later in the game, when your strategy becomes refined, it's more just repeating the same actions until she hits 18 and you get the ending you want. As you know, I rate games on a 3-point scale, must play, maybe consider, and don't bother. And Princess Maker 2 Regeneration is, in my opinion, the best way to play a classic game, except maybe on the PS4. The improvements to the UI make tracking her stats and progress much easier, and the new art and full voiceover are massive improvements. That being said, the game still suffers from the problems the original game had. Still, if you've been looking to get into this series, this is a solid start. So if you enjoy extremely open-ended games where you can ruin a girl's life with unrealistic expectations, maybe go out there and try to make a princess. That's all I got for today. Thank you so much for watching. If you played or even heard of the Princess Maker games, what are your thoughts on it? Please let me know in the comments. But regardless, if you're interested in this franchise, Regeneration is the one to check out.